Chapter 11. Expose the Evil. Looking for inspiration for the Mona Lisa project, I had planned a visit for a small team to the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center in Cincinnati. The museum exists to raise awareness about our nation's terrible legacy of slavery, racism, and Jim Crow laws. It also honors the work of the abolitionists and civil rights movement heroes who have fought and sacrificed for justice. The museum includes replicas of the instruments used to imprison the blacks: handcuffs, cages, restraining bars for the shoulders and arms. We walked quietly through the exhibits that detailed the lynching, enslavement, and dehumanizing horrors of the transatlantic slave trade. Brutal slave traders had locked helpless men, women, and children into coffin-like boxes on ships, giving them little food or water for weeks, and leaving many to die in their own vomit and excrement. It was astonishing to think that less than 2 centuries ago, in the United States, everyday people from both the North and the South accepted slavery as a normal institution, a part of daily life, many without questioning it. Throughout most of human history, slavery had been accepted as a normal practice. Many Americans participated directly in the cruelties that so many blacks endured: excruciating family separations, rapes, physical torture and abuse, the parading of naked human beings at markets where they were bought and sold as livestock. As I read the stories and saw the displays, I tried to come to terms with the willingness of everyday people to participate in such an evil institution. How could any human being buy or sell other humans and treat them like cattle? I had asked similar questions years earlier when reading about the Holocaust. How could anyone send a little child into a gas chamber? How could anyone shoot a mother in the head in front of her children, no less? The common theme, I learned, was dehumanization. The groundwork for the Holocaust was established long before the concentration camps were constructed. In his landmark book, Nazi Germany and the Jews, Saul Freinlander, a Holocaust survivor and a professor of mine at UCLA, argued that, yes, ordinary people living in a modern society, not unlike our own, perpetrated these horrors. He did not mean that ordinary people were intrinsically evil. What he meant was that ordinary people, conditioned by a regime, an ideology, and a political culture that were anything but commonplace, could do terribly evil things, if the evil seemed normal. In that sense, what happened in Nazi Germany in the mid-20th century was horrific, but not exceptional. The National Underground Railroad Freedom Center reminded us that dehumanizing our fellow human beings was not limited to one century or one nation. It was a warning of what could happen any time when we view our brothers and sisters as the other, as less than, and dehumanize them. How do we combat dehumanization? Successful social reform movements combat it by working to rehumanize the victims of dehumanization. Greg Cunningham, founder of the Center for Bioethical Reform, an anti-abortion organization, believes that graphic imagery plays a key role in such efforts. Greg said, "The history of social reform is the history of horrifying pictures." He then cited several examples. Pictures of Native American women and children massacred by the U.S. Cavalry. Pictures of African Americans beaten to their knees for trying to register to vote. Pictures of little children suffering terrible abuses in American coal mines and factories. Such imagery, he contended, convinced the country that the victims were real people, fully entitled to rights of personhood. The images also persuaded the electorate that the injustices depicted therein were sufficiently egregious to warrant criminalization. Under Greg's leadership, the Center for Bioethical Reform has done painstaking, groundbreaking work to capture images and video of abortion victims. To help convince an unbelieving world, Greg has also secured signed statements from abortionists verifying that the photos and film footage are authentic. Vivid images have the power to rehumanize victims, and so we have to be willing to show them. Such images have the power to drive change. Jonathan Klein, co-founder and chairman of Getty Images, has said, "Since the beginning of photography, images have provoked reactions in people, and those reactions have caused change to happen. Images have the power to fuel entire movements that lead to social change. It's a truth that has been demonstrated time and again in many social reform movements over the last century, including the American Civil Rights Movement. In 1955, 14-year-old Emmett Till of Chicago was visiting his cousins in Mississippi. One day, while playing outside a small grocery store, Emmett was accused of whistling at the young female proprietor. A few days later, the woman's husband and his brother abducted Emmett at gunpoint from his elderly uncle's house and beat him brutally, almost beyond recognition. They then shot the young teenager in the head and dumped his body in a river. The story of his murder spread like wildfire through Chicago's black community. Distraught, Emmett's mother, Mammy Till Bradley, demanded that she be sent the body of her son so she could bury him in Chicago. The coroner had sealed the coffin, but Mammy insisted on seeing her precious son before the burial. Looking at his broken, swollen, and disfigured body, she decided to hold a public funeral and leave his casket open. "I wanted the world to see what they did to my baby," she said. Thousands attended the service, and photojournalists took pictures. Once published, these photos shocked the nation as they exposed the brutality of racism. The photos also brought attention to the utter failure of the justice system to protect blacks. Emmett's killers were acquitted by an all-white jury. Mammy's controversial decision to leave his coffin open helped spark the civil rights movement. Images matter. They can change everything. As our Mona Lisa team wandered the National Underground Railroad Freedom Center, we contemplated how each century had its own strain of blindness to the humanity of every person. Abortion was our era's great injustice. In America alone, from the time abortion had been legalized to the time we toured the Freedom Center, more than 35 million children had been killed. In the few hours we were there, as many as 1,000 more children would die in the nation, whose taxpayers were funding Planned Parenthood. In a telling NPR interview, David Livingston Smith, a professor of philosophy and author of the book Less Than Human, Why We Demean, Enslave, and Exterminate Others, explained how societies have dehumanized others to become very deep and natural inhibitions against killing them. Thinking sets the agenda for action, and thinking of humans as less than human paves the way for atrocity, wrote Smith in an excerpt from his book. It's wrong to kill a person, but permissible to exterminate a rat. To the Nazis, all the Jews, gypsies, and others were rats. Dangerous, disease-carrying rats. You might think that Smith would be a champion of the pro-life cause. You would be wrong. In Less Than Human, Smith made only one reference to abortion. He spoke of it in reference to the Great Chain of Being, a hierarchical view of the value of matter and life, which he described as an ancient, discredited, pre-scientific model of the cosmos. His point was that our moral judgments about what can and cannot experience harm depend in large measure on where we place them on the Great Chain of Being. He wrote, "Intuitions get foggier as we climb higher. Is swatting a mosquito cruel? How about stepping on a cockroach or skewering a writhing worm on a fishhook? Plunging a living lobster into boiling water, or gutting a trout for dinner, killing a chicken, slaughtering a lamb, performing abortion, executing a criminal." Whether consciously or not, Smith found one victim in his chain unworthy of designation, even as an object of pity. He spoke of cockroaches, worms, lobsters, and criminals, but when it came to abortion, Smith wrote only performing an abortion. He refused to say who, or even what it was that was being aborted. In a glaring moral cop-out, he not only dehumanized the baby, but he also denied the baby's existence. With this denial, he could ignore the 50 million American babies killed in the 40 years prior to the publication of his book and the controversy surrounding their deaths. That an authority on dehumanization such as Smith could overlook the most flagrant example of that very phenomenon is a testament to the abortions industry's lock on the culture. It also serves as a reminder of just how much work those of us in the pro-life movement have left to do. Today, the most dehumanized among us is the child in the womb. This child is not even considered a human, worthy of basic legal protection. Indeed, the unwanted unborn enjoy fewer protections than unwanted animals. Instead, preborn children are routinely dismembered, suctioned to death, deprived of nutrients, given lethal injections, all with the consent of the law, and in the name of rights. Education about the humanity of the child is desperately needed. People need to be shown the evil of abortion, the true agenda of abortionists, and the abuses of the abortion industry. Inspired by the abolitionists and civil rights activists, our Mona Lisa team was determined to provide education about what was happening, to make whatever impact we could to put an end to this injustice. Video cameras would be our weapons. Video footage was even more powerful than a single image. We believed that capturing the stories of the abortion industry's abuses on camera and exposing them to the world would put a human face on our campaign for justice. We set off to begin the investigation. I had stopped at Walmart and bought clothes a 13-year-old might wear. Hannah Montana was one of the most popular TV shows for middle school students at the time, and so for one of my outfits, I bought a colorful t-shirt with Hannah Montana's face on it. Guys, I know it's kind of weird, I said, but I'm going to start acting like a 13-year-old for at least an hour before I go to the clinic. I was sitting in the back of the SUV, dressed up in a pair of old jeans and my Hannah Montana t-shirt. My friend was wearing a sparkly headband and a top from the preteen section at Walmart. With our button cameras in place, we started talking like teenage friends. It wasn't that difficult for us. We had been best friends since we were 10 and felt at ease with each other, but we needed to get into character. The roles we would be playing varied dramatically from the real lives we experienced as teens. I was Bree, the 13-year-old victim of a sexual abuser who was twice my age, just 19 at the time. I could still pass pretty easily for a 13-year-old. Clinic staff should recognize my situation as a clear-cut case of statutory rape. By law, they were required to immediately report my case to Child Protective Services or the police. My friend was Madison, my 15-year-old cousin whose family either did not know or care that she was accompanying another underage girl to an abortion clinic. We were visiting Planned Parenthood's Bloomington Health Center, an easy walk from the University of Indiana campus, a little more than 2 hours due west of Cincinnati. The facility would be one of more than half a dozen we would investigate during our tour. The conversation that follows was recorded and then transcribed, word for word. Counselor, I saw the note that you want to talk about an abortion. Have you had a positive pregnancy test? Okay. And a missed period? Bree, a couple periods. Counselor, a couple periods. Okay. Okay, how old are you? Bree, is that confidential? Counselor, yeah, I don't know you from Adam, because all I have are the first 3 letters of your name. Bri or Bree? Bree. Bree. Counselor, so I don't know who you are. Bree, okay. Counselor, and our services here are totally confidential anyway. We don't give out anything. No way. That's the way we work here. For everything. Abortion, family planning. That's just the way we do it. Bree, okay, I'm 13. Counselor, okay, go ahead. Bree, I just need to talk about getting an abortion because my parents... Counselor, okay, do you live with a parent? Bree, I live with her. I mean, she's my cousin. I live with her. My parents aren't even here. Counselor, where are they? Bree, in California. Counselor, okay, let me just tell you what the problem's going to be. In the state of Indiana, you have to have a parent's signature to get an abortion. One parent. Bree, I really can't tell my parents, because if they found out, they would find out everything. Counselor, okay, if you told them, they would find out everything? Bree, yeah, I mean, they would want to know who was the father and everything, and I can't tell. I wouldn't want to tell them about all that stuff. Counselor, okay. Bree, he would be in really big trouble. Counselor, 'cause I don't want to know how old he is, okay? Bree, what do you mean? Counselor, I don't want to know how old he is, okay? Because in the state of Indiana, for anyone 13 years and younger, there has to be a report done to CPS, Child Protective Services. Bree, but he's not as old. I mean, he might. Counselor, doesn't matter. Bree, be a lot older, but he doesn't act a lot older, and I act a lot older than I am. So it works out because he might be 31. He's older, but he's not older. I don't know. You know what I'm talking about? Madison, but he's not like that. He's not weird or anything. Bree, yeah, he's not weird. Counselor, in the state of Indiana, when anyone has had intercourse and they're age 13 and younger. Bree, I'm almost 14. Counselor, it doesn't matter. You're 13. It has to be reported to Child Protective Services. You understand what I'm saying? Bree, if I got an abortion here, it would have to be reported? Counselor, yeah, I can't make you fill out the information with me today. I'm supposed to report to Child Protective Services that you're pregnant and you're 13 years old. We have to report that to Child Protection. Madison, so how could you do it without, getting in trouble? Because my parents can't know about it either. But, it's fine. He's a great guy, and... Counselor, doesn't matter. I know that you're not grasping what I'm saying. Not at all. Because okay, I didn't hear the age. I don't want to know the age. Madison, okay, great. Bree, you don't want to know the age? Counselor, anyone. Let me go get you a chart so that I can explain it fully. Counselor pauses to get the appropriate chart. Counselor, okay, anyone. I know this is a crazy chart. Your age, okay. Age of patient, you're 13. Okay. So, Bree, but I'm almost 14. Counselor, okay, anyone. Bree, I'll be 14 in like a month and a half. Counselor, say you are 14, okay? It would not need to be reported to Child Protection. Okay, if you had an abortion in the state of Indiana. Bree, so if I went when I'm 14? Counselor, yeah, but if you're already 2 months, you're going to be too far to have an abortion. When was your last period? Bree, 2.5 months or something? Counselor, March. Let's just say March 15. You're already 12 weeks. Anyway, let me explain this one part. Then we got to work on this other part, because you're in between a rock and a hard spot. I mean, you really are. We're talking, this is a problem. You need to get this taken care of ASAP. And the problem is that you can't get your parents okay. Anyway, age of patient, say you're 14. The conversation went on for some time as the counselor instructed me in the many ways I could circumvent the law. In the section above, we talked about this one part, namely, how to avoid getting the baby's father arrested. In the longer section that followed, we talked about the other part, namely, how to dispose of the evidence of the boyfriend's crime, the baby, without getting parental consent. Of course, we didn't use that language. We talked around everything. I felt bad for the counselor. By participating in abortion and sexual abuse cover-up, she too had become a victim of the evil she represented. She didn't want to know the age of my boyfriend or intervene in any way. In her own fashion, it seemed as if she genuinely wanted to help me, even if that help meant killing my baby, skirting Indiana law, and sending me back to my 31-year-old boyfriend without filing the mandated report. By talking in circles long enough, she could block out her role in enabling a crime that virtually all Americans agree is evil: statutory rape. Although I was only acting the part of a pregnant 13-year-old, the problem we documented in the Mona Lisa Project was real and widespread. When my friend Phil Klein was elected Attorney General of Kansas in 2002, he reviewed the case histories of the 166 abortions performed on girls under 15 in Kansas during the years 2002 and 2003. Of those 166 cases, the state's abortion clinics reported only 3 to the State Department of Social and Rehabilitation Services. By law, they had to report all 166. Fully ignoring the reason why Klein challenged the state's Democratic administration to turn over the relevant records, the media turned on Klein with a vengeance. In this solidly red state, the media turned on Klein lost his 2006 re-election bid to a former Republican whose campaign was fueled by PACs massively funded by the abortion industry, including the nation's leading late-term abortionist, George Tiller. The new Attorney General, Paul Morrison, called the outcome a victory for Kansans who want to make sure their most private personal records are kept private. But Klein never wanted to make those records public. He wanted to use them to prosecute child rape. Like other Kansans, including those in the media, Morrison chose not to acknowledge that by protecting these records, he was also indirectly protecting hundreds of child predators. For its feverish effort to defeat the anti-choice extremist, Klein, the Kansas City News, won Planned Parenthood's top editorial honor, the Maggie Award, named for its eugenicist founder, Margaret Sanger. Few people wanted to hear the truth, even about child abuse. Klein did not run from the controversy, and he paid a price. There's almost always a price to pay. Although our videos were released too late to help Klein, they confirmed his data and helped expose Planned Parenthood's casual protection of child predators. In ways no court document could, we showed the willingness of ordinary people to facilitate extraordinary crimes. All of live action's work would go on to expose not only the deceptive practices of these abortion facilities, but also the destructive act of abortion itself. If a picture's worth 1,000 words, a video can be worth 1,000,000. Today, we all have the tools at our disposal to document and post photos and videos that demonstrate the reality of injustice and evil. It is important not just to tell the story of the victims, but to show, graphically if necessary, the brutal devastation of their victimization. We can do our homework, get creative, and find ways to help others see and understand tragedy unfolding around them. What's at the root of almost every injustice? A lie. A lie about the human person, God, or what justice even means. Most of those who believe the lie simply don't know any better. The dangerous ones are those who do know better. To combat them, we have to study the deception and take the time to understand it. Truth can rehumanize those our opponents have successfully dehumanized. Knowing the truth ourselves is not enough. We have to wield it as a weapon.